Hey everybody, this is Nate Smoyer, and you're listening to the Tech Nest Podcast. This is the show where we sit down with the leaders in real estate and technology to find out what they're doing to transform the way we buy, sell, and invest in real estate. If you've got an interest in real estate and technology, stick around. You're in the right place.
All right, we've got a great episode here for you. Now, look, I didn't want this to be necessarily a how to do content marketing interview. But we went into quite a bit on how to do content marketing. And so I think it's really important for anyone listening to this. You're going to get really two valuable insights. One, what I already said on content marketing. But two, also how to think about or maybe rethink about working with the media to get your prop tech company talked about, mentioned. And because I get to interview Franco Faraudo. He is one of the co-founders at Propmodo, and he goes into the details of like types of stories they will write, criteria behind them, what drives what they're doing, the vision, all the multimedia. And so I know that, you know, maybe listen to a podcast about media is a little meta, a little bit outside the ordinary, but we're talking prop tech as well. We get into some fundraising discussions and trends in the industry. I think this is going to be a great episode. Kick back, relax. You're going to love it. Well, hey, Franco, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nate. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Glad to have you here. Always a pleasure getting a chance to chat with you. And of course, let's kick off the show proper. I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. Let everyone know who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thanks. Big fan of the podcast. Glad to be on. So my name is Franco Faraudo. I'm the co-founder of a publication called Propmodo. We are a digital and now print publication dedicated to innovation and technology in the real estate, particularly commercial real estate space.
Awesome. Okay. And now, obviously, today's a little bit of a different interview than we normally do. A lot of times we have, products and services that are directly in real estate, but you get to cover real estate. You see a lot of kind of similar to me. Like, actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm kind of trying to do some similar things that you're doing, but you're doing way more than I am. But you're covering the space. You're talking about the space. But what do you see as like the number one problem that Propmodo is focused on solving?
I think there's just... It's really, when you get into, anybody in real estate knows that you're so busy. That's part of being in real estate, is just being a very busy person. And so, there's a lot of information flying out there about, what's going on, what technologies are coming, what's disrupting, quote unquote. And it's hard to know, so we really wanted to be a thoughtful, analytical publication where people can come and get good, researched information about not only technology, but the innovation in general in the property sector.
Got it. And so then who's the primary audience then for Propmodo? Who are you writing to inform about everything that's happening? Because you're not wrong. There's so much happening, even if you're just talking commercial.
Yeah, so we're mostly on the commercial side, although that obviously brings in a lot of multifamily. Commercial properties is very big, and there's a lot of different parts to it, and so we try to have some content out there for everybody. So we have a lot on the brokerage side. We talk about investing and operating, facilities managers, corporate occupiers also are a big part of our audience. Basically, anyone who's very sophisticated in the commercial space and reads this stuff every day. That's kind of who we look to write to.
Got it. Yeah. So, what led you to doing this? Were you already working in the commercial real estate space, or were you just seeing it from the sidelines and wanted to get in the action? Like, what would drive you to write about this? Because this isn't something that everyone gets.
Yeah.
Morning,
Yeah, no, I thought I was crazy getting into publishing when, the publishing world is kind of awash with blood on the wall from all the closures. But, I was in commercial real estate and I enjoyed it, but I missed the creativity that I had. I was originally kind of in tech. I got my MBA in marketing and missed kind of the creative side of marketing. And so I really just started writing on my own, kind of a way to, pass the time. Had a new baby. And so spending a lot of time side. And yeah, I just started writing about, my experiences, what was happening, and getting them published. And that turned into, some content consulting. I did my ghost wrote for a lot of other companies. And eventually I started contributing regularly to a small kind of newsletter that was then called S6E60. And when it was going to be rebranded and kind of launched as Propmodo, the founder approached me and asked me to come on board as the co-founder and the editor, and I couldn't pass it up.
I mean, that just seems like a natural fit. I mean, that's kind of actually how I ended up at Avail in sort of in a way. I started working with Avail as a contractor, and then it just happened. I came out for a visit, and they were like, "Nate, we need you here full time." I was like, "Okay, that sounds good. I'm sold."
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about both real estate and creative projects are they're output based, right? And so you can do a little or a lot, and you can fit them into your schedule. I always joke that my side hustle, my writing, is now my full time gig, and I just do a little bit of real estate on the side just to keep the toe in the water.
Yeah. This is kind of, I wasn't planning on asking this, but it kind of just feels right here. I constantly have this struggle where I'm trying to figure out what is work and what I get to do is fun. I honestly blurs together. Do you find that same thing happen when you just get to write and create? Do you find there's a blur between what is fun and what is your job then?
I don't know, because I think that if you're really creating something, it is fun. And I think, I've thought a lot about boredom, and boredom, I think, can be really useful. I think that people who are good at things are usually so bored of doing it that they do it a little bit differently. The amazing pianist throws in the little riffs in between, I think for writing that comes through a lot, right? I'll often get to something that just seems kind of repetitive, and then I'll do my best to not make it repetitive, right? I'm the first person reading it, so I want to entertain myself too. So I really try to switch things up a little bit and keep it fun, because I think you notice that in the output, right? If it's like you can tell if someone's smiling when they're talking to you generally, I feel like you can get that same sense with someone's output. If they enjoy doing it, it comes through.
Yeah. Oh man, I was just listening to a book that was talking about that. It's someone else just recommended to me, is like the Book of Mentors or something like that. And they were just talking about like you need something you're passionate about in order to have the stamina to persist.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But I mean, even something you're passionate about can get old. But I think that if you really dig deep enough, you can find. I mean, that's what I often find myself doing. Right, I'm writing about things that people traditionally find boring. Right, HVAC in large buildings. But if you find a bigger context, if you find some good details, I think anything can be interesting if you really dig deep enough and look at it from the right angle.
Yeah, I don't think amenities and building services have ever had so many headlines about them. Until but in the last year, I've seen so many headlines talking about building amenities and facilities management and things like that. Like, it's not a topic I honestly ever thought I would want to read about, but I'm so fascinated because of the tremendous impact focusing on those details is having in real estate. And you're in a very unique position in that you get to help tell those stories. What are some of the most fascinating stories then, that you've seen or been a part of, let's say in like the last 6 months? I won't ask you to recall too many, but like the last few months, like what are some of the stories that really stand out to you?
I mean, I'm not going to say one story or another in particular, but I just think in general, there's been a big embrace by the property industry about the importance of what they're doing. I think that is what was missing for a long time, and I think maybe that's why the content around the industry was a little listless. Is that it's like, oh, it's just buildings, it's like, oh, it's just real estate. But that's such a silly way to look at it when these are things that, the majority of the world's population spends 90% of their time in, right? This affects our lives much more than I would even argue, maybe your cell phone or, the apps on it. Where your building is, how it's built is very, very important. And where the value lies in our economy. There's a lot going on. And I think that now property companies are starting to really see that they want to create community, like these kind of big ideas, these kind of big, like almost like you would see from technology, right? These kind of inspirational thinkers are starting to emerge in the property sector that I think is really great. So I won't give you one example, but that's just kind of an overall. I guess I'll tell people you got to come to our site and you'll see multiple great examples of amazing.
There you go. Yeah, if you want to see what's happening.
Yeah, I'm not going to give the milk away for free.
Yeah, well, really, anyone who listens to this show, whether one time or every episode, which I appreciate every single one of you, I fully endorse and recommend you should be subscribed to Propmodo emails, because I will just say this, and this isn't meant to be a promo piece. This isn't a paid piece or anything like that. But I will say that I don't get fluff. Like, there's not fluff coming out of Propmodo. Like, I'm not getting, and this isn't meant to trash anyone, but I hope we're all adults here, so we can say names. But I canceled my Inman subscription because I don't care what Gary Keller says about Glenn Sanford behind doors. I don't care. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean anything. I want to talk about the real stuff. I don't want TMZ of real estate. And Propmodo delivers, that next level. So everyone should be on it. If you're listening to the show, you should be subscribed. So that's
thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, that's something we really look at is, we're in an interesting space. We're a trade publication, but we're not just there to be a mouthpiece for press releases. And we write independently, so we have a lot of journalism, but at the same time, we're not just news. We try to add a lot of analysis and insight to everything we write. Yep. So we definitely try to be a little bit more. I mean, the majority of, at least on the commercial real estate side, the majority of publications are still very transactional focused, and that's something that we from the start decided not to do. We just really feel like as data becomes more accessible, that was a way that, people could get, before you had to kind of open the papers and read, what buildings were sold to who to kind of get an understanding, where I don't think that's really all that useful anymore. Right. So now we're really trying to add that next level of analysis, going and getting the interviews, doing the research. So, and to bring the story behind what's going on with all these transactions, instead of just, saying this building got sold for this amount of money.
Yeah. So then maybe you can walk me through a little bit. How do you decide then what criteria, story, or article is? What do you require from, I guess, the elements of a story to say, hey, this is worthwhile for us to cover and to do some research on or write about, or to take that press release and run it? Like what?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we don't run any press release. No, that's not true. There are definitely some interesting press releases that come across my desk. Really what we look for is what's an actionable piece of insight for the property industry, right? I think there's way too many articles that float around that are like, look at, all the ways AI is affecting real estate, or the 9 things that how technology is changing property management. And those are cute, but they don't really, our audience is sophisticated and they need some things to go a lot deeper than that. So really look for things that do provide that next level of insight. I think we're lucky because, again, the publishing industry is trying to figure out its path forward, and, kind of general publications, more mass market publications are really struggling because they generally relied on banner ads, right? And so It's very hard nowadays to compete with Google and Facebook in providing banner ads to a mass market.
Yep.
Or more targeted. So, I think us and a lot of publications, there's, Skift is a great one in hospitality. The Information is a great one, for kind of general tech, are going more towards being very focused, right? And so our readers are people that do this every day, people that read this every day. Like I don't put prop techs in quotes, like I say. I don't have to explain what every little thing is. I assume that our readers know because they do. And I think one, they like that, right? It makes, it just makes for better content. I think they appreciate that. But two, we're able to, without necessarily having huge traffic like some of these big sites, bring a lot of value to our, to our sponsors, because these are very, important people that are thinking about this every day and making these decisions. So, they are, I would say, a lot better than, X thousand random people on Facebook who bump into your banner.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that too. Even with my podcast, I was like, man, how am I going to get a big audience for this? And that the moment I even said that question out loud to myself as I was planning how I was going to put together a podcast, it was like, that's a stupid thing. I only want to reach the people who really care about this stuff,
right?
And it's just far more impactful and I feel like this is a great. Like, you're giving a subtle tip here as a content marketer yourself. Like, you have to be focused in what you're talking about for anyone to care. And if there's no flavor, or if it's just kind of this broad general flavor, then no one's going to care about it. It's not going to carry further. No one's going to talk about it. It doesn't leave a memorable experience. And like you said, there's nothing actionable. It sounds like, a lot of that, it really is like sound content marketing advice right there, even though you're coming at this from a journalistic perspective.
Well, what's interesting is that, there is kind of a mesh happening, and I think we're an embodiment of that. I did a lot of kind of content market consulting before I did this. And, we have really taken almost an agency type approach with our clients. We don't just kind of sell one-off advertising. Yeah, we have clients, and we do sponsored articles and podcasts and research reports and events, and we tie them around kind of editorial campaigns. Yep. And so a lot of it comes with just sitting down and doing the content consulting. Well, who is our audience? Who are we talking to? What's the right angle? And I think that's really useful for a lot of people, because sometimes it's hard to step back from your marketing points to really put yourself in the shoes of the audience and say, well, what do people want to hear? Yeah. That's the kind of, I think about like a Venn diagram of what does your audience want to hear, and what do you want to tell them about yourself? And like somewhere in the intersecting circles is kind of where you want to be, right? Because you're not just creating content, you create it, but at the same time, if no one wants to hear it, if you're just talking about yourself, you'll probably be in an empty room doing so.
Yeah, no, I think it's all solid. You just had a big event up in New York, right?
Yeah, it was. We do regular subscriber parties, mostly in Manhattan. So we just had one of those come and go. It was really great for the launch of our new research report about online property marketplaces. So yeah, we're really happy. We're actually putting together another event for New York Real Estate Tech Week. That's coming up on November 11th. We're the first of the week on Monday. And it should be a really great one. So if anyone is interested, feel free to reach out, and I'd love to chat with you about how to get you in there.
How do we get you to Chicago? Because I'm locked down on travel. I've already got all of my travel is already blocked out. I cannot fit any more in with everything we've got going on. But yeah, we can get you to Chicago. Let's make that happen. Yeah,
we like to. I mean, that's why we looked at doing bigger and bigger events, and then we really thought, well, let's go smaller with some of ours. So we do, do regular kind of small networking events all over the country and the world. We go to different places in Europe as well. So we've done one in Chicago. It was great. It's a great city, and obviously JLL is there, so there's a lot of great support. But New York is still kind of the center of the real estate world. So
it is. Oh man, it really is. It's not even comparable, but it's all good. It's all good. All right. Well, one thing I want to ask you about, so I mean, you have all these different types of articles, and I was going to go into it, and you hinted to it. So you're doing also some video and podcast stuff yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do all of our events. We always film the panels, and we write up articles about them. And we have conference calls. We turn into podcasts. We have kind of product demos and video webinars. So we dabble in all kinds of media.
Okay, so this won't apply to every company, but a lot of companies aren't taking advantage of creating video content, creating podcasts, doing some of the things you're talking about. And, I'm going to go back to it again, because I think it's really important that maybe we uncover this or talk through it. Why do you think companies are failing to take the time to create that type of content? Because it permeates so much deeper than trying to write blog posts every day. Like, I mean, the evidence is all over the walls, yet people, companies aren't taking the time to do it. Why do you think people don't do it?
Well, it's a hassle. I mean, it's, I always tell companies to start with blog posts, right? Get it hashed out there, find your voice, find your messaging. It's a lot easier to push a document to a blog on WordPress than it is to, go through and edit a podcast. But
yep.
I don't know. I mean, I think that it's still a growing medium. So I think people are just now, I mean, I'm surprised at how many people don't listen to podcasts. Right? Like, I think that, a lot of podcasts are getting listened to, and I think it's happening because there's a small amount of people listening to a lot of podcasts right now.
I mean, it's probably true. And there's still a big amount of people listen to podcasts in general. But when you cut out the top, 10%, it's a long tail after that. I mean, it's a long tail. Yeah. It's all good.
Or if you cut out everybody, under 29.
Oh, is under 29 the most popular segment, or?
I mean, generally for media like podcasts and a lot of social media channels like Snap and TikTok. It's once you get into the 30s, you're set in your ways and you're just doing what you grew up with. Listen to the FM radio.
Are you on TikTok?
I am not. No, I am in my 30s, so I'm not allowed to. I'm not.
I got a buddy who he's one of Gary V's filmers, and I was texting him and I was like, "Man, explain TikTok to me. I'm on it. I don't get it. I just don't. I have no idea what my place would be there." And he's just like, "Man." You gotta figure it out. He's like, Gary's got 3 people plus me working full time on this. And I've been watching some of his stuff and I'm like, it cracks me up. But I don't understand. Maybe I am too old. You're right. I'm in my 30s. I don't understand.
It's hard to stay with it. But, I will push back from one of your assertions earlier I think that writing stuff can still be one of the most powerful ways to promote a message. I remember back when Facebook kind of was basically falsifying video data. I don't know if they're falsifying or they were just if an error in their
and how they were recording video views.
Yeah, so if you Google, pivot to video, there was a period a few years ago where Facebook was showing, this huge spike in numbers for video, and everybody thought, oh, this is it. Video is so, is the future. No one's going to read anymore and everything, and so lots of publications just really focused on producing video, and come to find out, the views weren't there, and people are still reading. So. When you get into sophisticated ideas, I think, it's hard to go wrong with the written word.
Yeah, it's true. I spend more money on books than I do any other one thing that I own. So I think, I mean, there's still a lot of power in that and being able to reach people for sure. I'm curious. So, I know that, your product is information and how you put it together and present it. And so, when we talk to other founders on the show, I always like to ask, what has been something that you tried or you've tried along the ways and trying to grow your audience or make what you do better that turns out it didn't work or it wasn't what your audience was looking for? So I'm curious, is there any failed experiments that you're willing to share and maybe go into a story about?
Sure. I think a good example is, we have a lot of events and we have really great speakers come through and, really kind of famous people telling great insights about the property industry. And, my first thought was, well, we got to video this, right? We need to video this and capture it because everybody's going to want to watch this. And I think at this point, everybody that's ever had a conference will tell you that if you don't go to the conference, your chance of watching the video is really, really low. And if you go to the conference, your chance of watching the video is zero. Right? So there's not a huge audience for people to watch a 30-minute panel, even though it could be a really great one. So, we had to accept the fact, well, we still, thought that, well, this is great information. We want to have it. So that's where we kind of started doing these hybrids where we'll video things, we'll cut things up into small clips, but we'll write it into a kind of an article that summarizes things. So, if someone just wants to read through it and they're really busy and they just kind of need to, speed read it, they can certainly do that. But if they want to click through on all the videos and watch a couple minutes here and there of a little bit more detail, that's there for them too. So
yeah. No, that's good. I mean, I think it's always telling. I mean, if you have a list of failed experiments, clearly you were doing something. Either that or you're totally perfect. I'm not sure which one to believe.
Yeah.
Well, what would you then say though? Because you guys have been growing quite a bit. What would you attribute to the reason though you've been able to grow? Because maybe you do run ads yourself in promoting the publication, but I don't know if I've ever received an ad, like a Facebook ad from you guys or something. So what's been driving the growth?
It's pretty organic. I mean, there's a lot of sharing going on. I think it comes back to our content just being a little bit better. We always try to think of like, would someone share this? Right? If I don't care if someone would read it. I care if someone would say, "Wow, you got to read this," and that's kind of thing that really, can drive growth not only to a piece of content, but to a content creator.
Yeah.
Besides that, I think that just in general, the property industry, the kind of going idea is that. Eventually there is no technology, right? Like eventually there's not prop tech. It's just going to be property industry.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what's kind of happened. I think when we started, it was very much kind of techies looking at, all these kind of, futuristic things or very esoteric things that only they could really utilize. And now it's just a lot of people if you're going to read about anything, you should probably be reading about technology because that's the fastest moving part of any business industry right now. So
yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, especially when you're talking about technology that impacts the single largest asset class. I mean, that's kind of an important thing to stay focused on and to stay up on.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of money. And I think that for a long time, the property industry was just status quo. And they said, this is fine. But now that, I think, WeWork, although they've had a little bit of a stumble, but I think that their kind of rise to popularity and fame kind of turned a lot of heads. And, that's just one example. A lot of, properties really adopting technology and companies getting behind it and being being rewarded has really made the industry on a whole kind of say, okay, well, this is something we need to pay attention to.
Yeah, totally. I love it. And I wonder, how are you measuring that? Is it something they're willing to share? Because if I could figure that out, that would be amazing.
Yeah, no, it's weird. We never know. Sometimes we'll get an article that we had an article the other day about IoT and HVAC, and we all kind of said, HVAC. Is anybody going to click on something that says HVAC? And it was one of our most read articles of the year. And so I think one of the things to do if you're creating content, and I think this is partially just because of the way the internet works, right? It's that the more broad a search term is, the harder it is to win. So,
Yes.
Pick your niche and just win that. If you're going to write one thing, like write the thing on it, right? The definitive essay about this very specific topic.
Yeah, totally.
That goes way farther than 20 posts that are just like, oh, why real estate is an important thing to invest in. It's like by doing that, you're just throwing yourself into a sea of other pieces that, have already been generating enough, links to beat you on SEO anyways. So, coming at things differently, having a unique angle, and really kind of win your one little specific niche rather than writing for broad topics.
Yeah. It makes a ton of sense. And I feel like this episode has been both a get to know Franco at Propmodo / learn how to content market.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that's what I find I do a lot. We kind of are an interesting space because we see what gets the clicks. And so when we have clients that look at us for impressions and click-throughs and conversions, we do have to sometimes come in and say, look, I think you need to change this messaging. I think this isn't going to land. I think we need to go a different direction with this. And it almost kind of put us in a interesting kind of, consultative role that I think most publications haven't had up until now, but I think more and more probably will, especially as sponsored content becomes more the norm. And I think banner ads are going to be
the truth is already written on the walls. Banner ads, just selling on like a run of network or just on a website with some arbitrary CPM, aren't going to take you very far a lot of times. But tailored content, coupled with banner ads, I mean, that can be magic right there. But that we'll save that for
I feel like I have plenty to say about banner ads, and if you want me back on.
Well, we'll definitely talk about that again. I want to get into one more topic, and then we'll switch into the bottom half of the show here, where we get into the last two segments. Of course, we're not going to talk about PropTech without talking about fundraising. The Cretech report said it was, this year is a record year in real estate tech. And I think a lot of those reports that I see floating around typically exclude WeWork, which is, you can say they're real estate or not, it doesn't matter. But I want to talk about a few things. First, did Propmodo have to raise any money to get where you're at? Second, why do you think there's so much funding in prop right now? And the last piece of this, I'd love to hear your opinion on is, do you think we're in a bubble for the prop tech private capital raising?
So one, no, we haven't raised any money. We've been able to grow organically, and I'm really happy for that. I like owning my own company and not having to explain myself to anybody. As far as the funding numbers go, I really think that a little too much emphasis has been placed on this. I don't really think that it's, that's a very basic look of the industry landscape, right? How much money has gone into, these kind of small startups. I can't tell you how many articles start off with like that exact kind of intro you just gave to this question of, it's been a record-breaking year in prop tech funding, and
Right.
I always kind of just shake my head a little bit. I feel like it's a little bit of a sophomoric way to think that what an industry direction an industry is going. So I think you already kind of mentioned, a lot of those reports include WeWork, which a lot of people, including myself, think is probably more of a property company than a prop tech. But I think just in general, how much money's gotten put into these startups, that excludes all of the investment that's happening by these, big property firms right now. Internally, it's excluding all the investment, all the development that's happening in these, already huge property companies like Yardi and CoStar and, Zillow. Like, I think that looking at we have kind of, people are in love with the startup culture right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of, steering us away from a really good, nuanced view of innovation. And I also think that, we define, prop tech as not just even hard technology. I really feel like there's a lot of innovation happening in the space that isn't, with sensors and algorithms, right? It's just, you could probably point to WeWork and say that, even though they might not be a tech company, they're innovating. They innovated the sector in a way that no one ever had. And so, it wasn't because they have some, proprietary software or, have this like crazy hardware. They just kind of looked at things a little differently. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure to include those stories too, right? Of how people in the property industry are thinking about their job differently, doing their job differently, and how that kind of is changing, the way that we all touch the built world.
Yeah, I think that's I love it. I appreciate that response, and I think we talked about this in a previous conversation. That you guys you take the stance of, hey, we're not just going to run your press release because you raise money. It's got to have some sort of actionable insight or takeaway from it, and I think that's a good line to draw. It's cool that we raise money, but what does it go towards? What is it going to change or impact? And what are the resounding effects long term of that investment is really interesting, more so than today's dollar amount.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, the people in the marketing department of a company think that that's a great talking point about how much money you raised, but your clients, probably have just as many questions after they hear that than they did before. So,
it's those dang marketers, man. They just ruin everything.
I get it. But that's why sometimes it's nice to have, a champion for the audience.
Totally. All right. Well, we're going to get into my favorite segment of the show. This is called For the Future. It is a segment where I get to ask each guest who comes on the show to give their best predictions based on the following 4 questions. Franco, are you ready to play?
Yes.
All right, let's do it. Question number 1, what does Propmodo look like 1 year from now?
I would like to have much more in-depth essays about what's going on. And, obviously we would like to grow. We have a couple different, foreign language initiatives that I would like to grow. I'd like to see, we have French and Japanese, and we're looking at Chinese and Spanish. So I think there's a big, the world is a lot bigger than in the English-speaking world, and we'd like to reach out past that. So growth globally, and also just growth in what we talk about, and the depth of how we talk about it.
That's very cool. Question number 2, what is the housing market? And you can interpret that however you like, look like 1 year from now.
Well, I think there are going to be some shakeouts. I think some places are going to do really well. Any place that has kind of the TAMI clients around it will probably do really well. But I think some places are going to continue to struggle, and I think those are the places that have struggled. Right? I think a lot of the suburban and rural, areas are really gonna not have the kind of maybe even have a little bit of depreciation, where the more urban areas are gonna gain that.
Very cool. Question number 3, what's one industry trend you think will continue, but you wish would go away?
Oh boy, you're gonna get me in trouble. I think
Plan here.
I think that transactional press releases are going to continue, but I wish they would go away. I think that, like I said, just trying to read about what buildings got sold to who is not the best way to understand a market. And so there needs to be a lot more behind that. But I think property companies are still so used to kind of hiring a PR firm and pushing out their transaction that they can't see anything past that.
Got it. The fourth and final of For the Future, what's one thing you believe will dramatically change or fade away in real estate as a result of technological advances?
I think the messaging in real estate is gonna drastically change. I know that's very on brand of me, but I think
there's nothing wrong with being on brand.
Yeah, I mean I live on brand. What can I say?
There you go.
I live my life on brand. No, I mean I really think that there's a lot of problems in the real estate industry right now that are connected to messaging. Right, I think that it's a very graying industry. I think there's not a lot of good, interesting young people getting into it that are bringing that energy to transform it. And I think some of that is probably our fault, where we've kind of positioned ourselves as this, kind of, like a step down from finance or high finance or iBanking, right? Whereas I see it as like a much more transformational industry than almost any, just because of the impact it has on our fellow humans.
Awesome. All right, we're going to move into the last 3. Franco, this is for our listeners to better get to know you. We're going to do them lightning round style, since I know we are butting up against your time limit here, but all good and appreciate everything. First one here, what are you reading?
Right now I'm reading Richard Thaler's new book, Misbehaving. He's the Nobel Prize winning economist behind kind of the nudge theory.
Oh.
And yeah, so it's really interesting just about, behavioral economics and how to get people to do things and why people do things, particularly how people think about money and resources.
Adding to my reading list right now. No.
Yeah, highly recommend.
Question number 2, who are you learning from?
I am learning from everybody. I mean, we're lucky enough to be a place where, we have a lot of really great expert contributors throughout the industry. So, I feel so lucky that I get to read essays written by, all of these really inspirational people about who I consider to be really inspirational topics. So, I think that the new generation, I think the PropTech's always done a good job at this, but I think the new generation of property industry is also doing a really good job of being part of that conversation, being thought leaders and really getting their vision out there.
Yeah. Awesome. And the last 3, what inspires you?
I am inspired by a good space. I think when something is just when you walk somewhere, and it doesn't even have to be designed, it could be a natural space, but I feel like almost like a piece of art where you can't really conceptualize or put into context what it is that affects you so much. I feel like space often does that to me too. You go into that little divey bar, you come across the vista, or you're in kind of the park, and you find these really great little moments in this really unique, beautiful space. And I think that's just something I feel like is so precious and inspiring.
I literally had multiple places come right to mind, specifically the Snoqualmie Pass in the wintertime in Washington, as you're coming around this one bend and you see all of the evergreens are covered in snow just as you get high enough. And you can see like a train track way across the ravine, and then there's another arching bridge. Like that's what immediately is in my brain when you said that. That was amazing what just happened.
Well, that's what's so great. It's like they can be ingrained inside of us, right? Like they are like a piece of art. Like they're so powerful that you can carry them with you your whole life.
I love that pass. Franco, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you sharing all that you shared about Propmodo, what you guys are doing, all the content marketing tips. I mean, anybody listening to this, you just got a free intro to content marketing up through like intermediate content marketing. So obviously, you know who to call if you want that, because I'll do the talking. I'll let people like Franco do the writing. But before we head out, if someone wants to get in touch with you or learn more about Propmodo, where do they go and how do they do that? What's the best ways to do that?
Yeah, sure. First thing I would just suggest is sign up for our daily email. That's where, we have a lot of great content coming out every day. If you ever want to get in contact with me, I'm at Franco, Franco, at propmodo.com.
Boom. There it is. Easy enough. I can't wait for the next event coming to Chicago. I'm glad you promised that. Got it on the
Heard it here first.
You heard it here first, people. But really appreciate your time, and can't wait for us to actually get a chance to meet up in person and grab a drink and kick back. But until then, thank you so much for your time, and we'll catch you later.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening to the TechNest podcast. Hey, don't forget you can get on the email list so you never miss an upcoming episode. That's technest.io. That's technest.io. Get on the email list. Go to the App Store, whether you found us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you found us. Leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends. And if you've got a guest or someone that you'd like to recommend, or if you think that you'd be a great guest on the show, hey, send me an email, nate@realteampanda.com. That's nate@realteampanda.com. See you guys later.